Okay, so good evening everyone and welcome to our session with Gwendolyn from The Skilled Parent. This session is called Changing the Game Using Descriptive Praise. I have to say, we really need this session. It's so stressful sometimes trying to control any children, but when you have, how can we say, particularly independent children, then it's even harder. So thank you very much for coming to join us. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do all that. So let me just share my screen here. There we go. Have I shared? Okay, share screen. Did I do it? Am I there? I'm a bit of a Luddite, y'all, so you're gonna have to forgive me for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna hide myself just because I don't want to look at me. But I am really excited to be doing this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And as a matter of fact, it is the first skill I teach in every single one of my parenting, whether it's a course or one-on-one tuition, whatever it is. Descriptive praise is such a big game changer for people. So I really hope you guys enjoy the content that I have today. So to tell you just a little bit about what today is all about, we're going to talk about the skill of descriptive praise, and I'll get into what all that means in a minute, how it affects self-esteem. We're going to talk a little bit about where parents and oftentimes teachers put their focus, and the difference between criticism and feedback. So the type of praise that we're used to giving is what's called evaluative praise. Descriptive praise is going to seem a little bit if you're not used to doing it, it's going to seem a little bit foreign to start out with, but it makes a lot of sense when we understand it. So then we'll get into the benefits and how to deliver it and questions and answers. So we've got a full hour ahead of us. So I am looking forward to talking to you. So who is this woman? Just to tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Gwendolyn Jones, and I am the founder of The Skilled Parent. My journey into where I am now started when I became a teacher. My bachelor's degree is actually in psychology, and I started in looking at child and adolescent development. That's where I was kind of interested in going with things. And I took a year off after my bachelor's and worked as a classroom assistant, fell in love with teaching because I was teaching in a classroom that was a self-contained unit for children with behavior disorders, emotional disturbances, who found it difficult to be in the regular classroom, so they would come to us because that was the best placement for them to be successful. So from there, I decided, nope, I'm going to do teaching, and I went into teaching, taught for 9 years. I got married in the process of all this, and when I became pregnant with my first child, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the best parent ever because I was very good at working with children who had a difficult time, and they became very happy to do what they were asked to do, and they thrived and they were successful. So I thought, oh, I tell my students all the time, there's only 2 reasons why I tell you to do anything or why I do anything, and that is either to keep you safe or to help you learn. So I became a parent, and I was like, right, I've got to keep him safe and I've got to help him learn. And then all of a sudden I had this awakening moment where I was like, wait a second, I get to love this kid, and not only that, I get to keep this kid, so I don't turn him over in a year or 2. I get to keep him forever. And so I really learned how kind of putting research-based behavior management techniques in with loving and accepting and really enjoying being a parent, and the struggles that came with it too. I really became fascinated with that side of things, and it really also helped me understand the parents of my students as well, because I think teachers that don't have children can be amazing teachers, but you understand where a parent's perspective is when you have kids of your own. You get it a little bit more. My oldest is not a neurotypical child. He's got all sorts of letters by his name, and so I have been through that process as well. I've been on the other side. I've been on both sides of the evaluation table, which has been very interesting. And then I have 3 younger children and a fur baby. We immigrated to the UK about 6 years ago, and I taught over here as well. And I realized in doing this that I did not like teaching. What I really enjoyed doing was working with families and working with children who were not neurotypical, who had a difficult time, and helping parents develop the skills that they needed to be able to maximize the time that they could spend with their children. And so I retrained as a therapist, and I now work as a parenting coach and a corporate speaker, and I help stressed out moms and dads turn their chaos into a nice, calm, and happy home. So that's my little spiel about me. So today's topic, descriptive praise. So the reason this is so important is because it helps build self-esteem. And we talk about self-esteem all the time. And we use that term quite frequently, but I don't think people delve into what it really means and why it's important for children. There are some, excuse me, y'all, I'm going to have to be drinking a lot of water because I'm melting over here. I moved to England to get away from the heat. Anyway, so when we talk about self-esteem, the reason we look at why it's so important for children, obviously things come into play that we know about, like they behave well, they're less likely to be bullied, they're less likely to give into peer pressure. But there's subtleties that come into it well, like building up their confidence, learning to accept themselves and learning to accept others. They adopt a solution-based approach to things, so they're not so much focused on the final result as in finding new strategies to put into place to become more successful. And they have a good sense of self-worth, and one thing that I appreciate is they also have a good sense of humor usually too, and that's something that's important in our family. One thing that people often ask me is, if I praise my child too much, can he or she have too much self-esteem? People talk about children, kind of being big on themselves, bigging themselves up too much. Remember that self-esteem is not the same thing as vanity, and that's sometimes those words are interchanged in our language, and they really don't need to be. Self-esteem is all about an accurate estimate of the self. So if your child has a healthy self-esteem, it doesn't mean they think that they're better than anybody. It means that they think that they are working as their best self. So they have a healthy self-esteem when they're working from a point of truth and confidence and resilience. Whereas vanity is when they're more concerned with doing better than everybody else, being the best, or being a failure. So that's why we don't have to worry about praising them too much to develop a healthy self-esteem. So how do we foster a good self-esteem? Well, there's no easy answer to that, unfortunately. It takes a lot of time, and it takes consistency, and it takes 10 times more effort to instill healthy self-esteem than it does to ruin self-esteem. You can do that in a comment or an instant or an experience. So the way we foster self-esteem in our children is to pay attention to what we're doing and how it is affecting our children and how our children hear it. So sometimes what we're saying is not the same thing as what our children are hearing. So when I tell my son, "Will you hurry up, please? I need to go," he's not hearing that I'm in a rush and I'm feeling panicked. He's hearing, "You're very slow. What's wrong with you?" So I have a little poem I would like to read. And before I read this, I want to tell you that this is done without judgment. This is read to you from a place of a very humble parent who has said or done most of the things in this that are said in this poem. But what I would really like you to do is listen as if you're a child. Think about how my words are about to make you feel. How did you feel about me as your parent? And what are your levels of motivation to do what I ask you to do? So this poem is called Morning Mayhem. And I'm sure most of us can relate to having some morning mayhem. So here we go. "Come on, you two, what are you doing? I leave the room for 2 minutes and immediately you mess around. Why can't you just do as you're told? It is not time for play now. How many times do I have to tell you? You are so slow. We're going to be late now. It'll be your own fault if we don't have time for a cooked breakfast. Jamie, will you get your shirt on? No, I will not do your buttons up for you. You must be capable of doing them by yourself by now. Sarah can do them, and she's a year younger than you. You're just lazy. Sarah, if you touch that doll one more time, I'm going to put it in the bin. Get dressed." You two are giving me gray hairs. It's not nice to start the day off like this. You're both ruining it. And both of you are being so unhelpful and making me so upset. Oh, for goodness sake, Jamie, you've done your buttons up all wrong. I'll have to do it for you now. Oh, and now you pulled the button off your trousers. Right, that's it. No swimming on Saturday. Oh, Sarah, leave Jamie alone. You are so mean. How would you like it if I poked you like this? Oh, don't make such a fuss. It couldn't have hurt. Jamie, have you got your violin? Oh, you didn't leave it at school again. You're always forgetting something. I think you'd forget your head if it weren't attached to your body. Oh, please, please, will you just get your shoes on, Sarah? If you put them on all by yourself and come downstairs quickly, I'll let you have a chocolate croissant for breakfast. No, you can't watch TV. I said, no, you cannot watch TV. Oh, all right, fine, but just for 10 minutes while I'm getting breakfast. So, again, this is read to you from a very humble place without judgment, because I myself has said most, if not all, of the things in this poem. And it's said out of a place of frustration and a place where I'm not thinking and I've rushed. So what we think about when we listen to ourselves and when we listen to kind of the rhetoric that we are spewing that has come from our parents, that other parents say, when we kind of take a step back and look at that, we think, oh my goodness, this is not what I signed up for. This is not the mom I wanted to be. So learning the skill of descriptive praise is going to help us to be able to stop nagging and criticizing and scolding them and punishing them and comparing them and labeling them and belittling them and begging them and bribing them, all those things. Descriptive praise helps put the power back in your words for good and for calm and for peace and love in your home. So where do parents put their focus? Now, we don't nag our kids and yell at our kids because we're mean people and we just enjoy doing it. We're doing it from a place of trying to make them better. We were taught you learn from your mistakes. So therefore, if I point out mistakes to you, then you will be able to learn from them, right? So we focus when they sit at the dinner table on the mistakes that they're making. So a typical night at my table, we're all sat down, 3 children are eating fine. Next thing I know, one child has knocked peas off the plate. And what's the first thing I do? Of course, you know, naturally I would go, oh, Maddox, will you please just put your peas back on the plate? Why are you doing that? That's what I focus on. Now, I have 3 children that are doing it correctly, but I don't pay attention to them. I pay attention to the mistakes. When it comes to having a healthy mindset, what we see is what makes our reality. And so if I am constantly looking for negative and mistakes in my children, then that is going to be all I see. And my children are so much more than that. They are so much more than the peas off the plate and the lost violin and the not being able to tie their shoes even though they're 7 years old. So what descriptive praise helps us do is switch our mindset, flip the switch on that, and start to really look at what is my child doing well? Even if it's not perfect, that's fine. What are they doing well, and how are they working towards something for their betterment and for the betterment of our relationship as a parent and child? There was a study done back in the 90s that focused on how much positive and negative, or how many positive and negative comments adults like to hear in a workplace to feel like they work in a happy place. And so from there, John Gottman took that research and took it into classrooms and homes and said, how many comments are children hearing that are positive, that are negative, and that are just command comments? And what the research found was, on average, children hear 6 negative or command comments for every 1 positive comment. Now, adults that were in workplaces that didn't have at least an even ratio between negative and positive found themselves in a negative workplace. And our children are hearing at school and at home 6 to 1. Well, this is amazing that we've learned this, because now we can take this research and we can flip the switch on it, and we can decide that no, instead of focusing on the negative, I'm going to focus on what my child is doing well, because he does a lot well and he deserves credit for it. So I don't know how many of you have gotten homework back from school that looks similar to this. So a child writes the first sentence, the cat sat on the mat. Old school teachers, and some newer teachers as well, break out that red pen. What do we focus on? Well, mat is spelled incorrectly. There's no full stop at the end. There's 2 thes. When they're sitting down and doing their homework, this is what we're trying to point out to them so that they can learn. What we're not seeing is, oh, look, you started that with a capital letter. Well, look at that. You know that sentences start with a capital letter. Oh, look at that. Cat and sat are spelled correctly. Did you notice how they both have at the end? They're word families. That's fantastic. Oh, Very good. I like the way you spelled the. There's so many things that we can look at this and see that are positive. But the first thing that we have been trained to do because of how our teachers and our parents trained us is to look for the negative. So using descriptive praise, I can look at that first sentence, and assuming it came from one of my children, I can say, Aria, look at that. You wrote that entire sentence. I think that's fantastic. It shows me that you're really trying hard to complete your homework. Oh, and look at that capital letter. What do you think about that? Now, there's two things that happen in every sentence. One is they start with a capital letter. What's the other one? And immediately she's going to pipe up with, oh, and they end in a full stop, and she will correct herself. Now, what happens in that moment? I've given her descriptive praise. I've not hurt her feelings at all and made her feel like a failure, and she has come up with a solution herself to correct her mistake. This is developing a growth mindset, and that's a whole nother series of webinars we can do later on. But growth mindset is absolutely critical in our children, especially our children that are not neurotypical, because they need to learn to put in new strategies to try and get better results. So criticism versus feedback, sometimes they can sound exactly the same when we say them. I am particularly bad with this one. So my intention when I give criticism, for example, is to say, there's a mistake here that I know you don't want. I would like for you to fix it. Okay? Feedback, on the other hand, is something that is given to somebody so that they can take that information and go forward. So my intent may be to give them feedback, but what I really need to pay attention to is, are they hearing feedback, or are they hearing that they're being criticized? So focusing on descriptive praise and focusing on the positive side of things is what will make sure your children are hearing feedback. Now, my intention is the same between criticism and feedback, but what we have to remember is what is our child receiving? That's the most important thing. And so what is the result? If my child feels criticized, he feels like a failure. He's probably not going to show me his homework next time until I nag him to death. He's not going to want to try, and he might develop some anxiety. Oops, I went backwards. So how do we get our children to accept feedback? Well, in order to accept feedback, a person has to be coming from a place of confidence and resilience. So before we can even really start giving feedback to them, they need to be able to develop that resilience. So that's where descriptive praise comes into play. Now, evaluative praise are the easy one-offs that we give to our kids. Clever boy, well done, oh, you're so pretty, that's fabulous, great job. My favorite one that always comes out of my mouth is great job. I feel like I'm a broken record with that one. The difficulty with evaluative praise is that it is very subjective. It doesn't have any value to it. It doesn't have any credibility. Children often don't believe it. So for example, if I have a child who's doing his math homework and he says, oh, I can't do this when I'm so stupid, and I say, oh, no, you're a clever boy, he's arguing with me already. I've created an argument, and Sarah, you have a really great word for that, and I've forgotten what it was. So we'll have to get you to say what that is later on. But we've created an argument. Now, my child that's autistic, that likes to have things be very black and white, if I tell him he's being clever when he feels he's not clever, he will argue with me, and that will be the end of everything, because now I'm just stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. It also makes children distrust adults. So if I tell someone that they've done a good job and then they haven't done, but I'm just trying to move on and tell them, okay, great job on that picture that you scribbled for 15 seconds. They know that it's not their best. They know when they haven't done a good job, and it makes them feel like I'm lying to them. It focuses also more on the achievement and the outcome. So a really good example for this is I had a client, and she's allowing me to share this story with you, who had a difficult time getting her children to read at night. And so she started giving them stickers for reading. And she was trying to tell me about how now her children love to read. And I said, okay, well, now you can start fading out the stickers and they can really start developing that reading. And she said, oh, no, I can't fade out the stickers, because if I don't give them stickers, they won't read. So what she was really fostering in her children was a love of stickers more than she was fostering a love of reading. So when she started implementing descriptive praise into her children's reading, they still got stickers every now and again. But what a child wants more than anything is a parent's attention and their love, and descriptive praise is the way that we can do that and the way we can put that forward. So how do we do it? So I've talked a lot about it. Oops, I've got my slides in reverse order, but that's okay. So how do we do it? When we give descriptive praise, what we need to do is focus, first of all, on what they've done right. We're going to find something specific that they've done. So you've eaten your beans, even though I know you didn't like them very much. That shows me that you know, your nutrition's important to you, so good job. If they're in the process of doing something and you're starting to feel a bit of resistance, you can start to notice and mention tiny steps that they're doing. So I had one that went through I don't want to brush my teeth phase. And so we would start praising, oh, look at you. I know you don't want to brush your teeth. I can tell that right now, but you're still walking up the stairs. And so that shows me that you're willing, you know, to get moving, and you're trying to meet me on this one. You're also going to praise effort and strategies that they used. So you're not going to praise that they finished. You're going to praise that they've worked hard and that they've tried different things. You know, even look at that addition problem. Even though it was difficult for you to begin with, you're putting in some new strategies to try and get a better result. And that shows me that it's important to you to put the effort into your schoolwork. You're going to state the quality that they're showing. So there are all sorts of different qualities that we can say our children are showing. They can be showing kindness, they can be showing empathy, they can be showing a work ethic. The vocabulary that you use will obviously change based on the age of your child, but what you're doing when you're using descriptive praise and stating their quality is helping them develop a value system. So if I am constantly using descriptive praise to tell my children I appreciate that they were being honest even though they knew that they might have a consequence for a choice that they made, that's developing a value of honesty in them. The other thing to remember is when you use descriptive praise, there is no but, there is no however, there is no maybe, there is no way that you're going to qualify that statement. You don't start with descriptive praise and then move on to, but it would really be nice, because you completely negate everything you say when you put your but in there. And you praise what is observable without qualification. So a good example of this is one mom's been praising her 5-year-old for persevering. When she didn't give up on tying her shoes, mom was using descriptive praise and highlighted this. She said that even though I know this is difficult for you, you didn't ask for help, and you really, really tried, and you worked at it until you got where you needed to go. Another place that you can use descriptive praise is when your child is in the middle of a meltdown. And this can be actually really, really beneficial because it helps them kind of pull themselves back. So if your child is having a hard time and they're pitching a fit and they're yelling and crying, you can start praising the absence of the negative. So even though you're really angry at your brother right now, you're not hitting him. And that lets me know that it's important to you to be safe. So I can feel your anger, and I can feel how angry you are with each other, but you're keeping your hands to yourself. So thank you for that. You can point out the quality or shown behavior as a sign of maturity. Children love to feel a little bit more grown up. So when you say, oh, you know, that's showing me that you're really maturing and you're understanding why it's important to get out the door on time. You're not just doing it because mommy yells and screams. You're showing me by getting ready to get out the door that it's important to you to be punctual because it's important to me to be punctual. You can praise even when they're doing things that you don't like. For example, you can praise them for something earlier on in the day. So when you're having kind of those moments where you're just, you know, days like today where it's really hot and you're bumping heads and you need to find a way to break a cycle, you can say things like, I remember yesterday when you didn't want to leave Jack's house, but you came anyway. And so you're learning to do that even though sometimes you want to do something and we can't do it, you're learning that it's still important to do what's necessary. So thanks for that. And it kind of brings you out of that spiral that we all get into while we're parenting with our children. Oh, excuse my dog if you can hear him, guys. Sorry about that. So studies have shown that using descriptive praise fosters a stronger sense of growth mindset than anything else that you can put in there. This means that your children are willing to put themselves out there. They're willing to try harder. They're willing to try more. They're willing to fail. That's a skill that a lot of parents don't like to talk about, but there are points and times in our lives where we fail at things. And wouldn't you rather your child learn how to deal with that when he's safe at home with you and you can process that, than when he's off in the great wide world and he's never had to experience that emotion before? They learn that failure is not a fine line. Failure just means this didn't work out and I need to put in a new strategy. So fostering that growth mindset in children with descriptive praise has lifelong benefits. So let me go back to this other one. So another thing about using descriptive praise is that children want our attention. Children love to have their parents' attention in one way, shape, or form. Now, if they cannot get their attention by being good little children who get praised for what they're doing well, then they will find other ways to get our attention. And I'm sure that I know some people on this call have children with letters behind their names that mean behavior can sometimes be an issue at home. Those children especially do well with descriptive praise because they are constantly being told all the time what they're doing wrong at school. So when they can come home, and they, we are having to manage their behavior pretty consistently. When they can come home and hear things that they're doing well, they will go out of their way to do more for you, to get your attention, because that's what they want. Your child also gets to hear that she's a success. Children don't get to hear that very often. They know, or we assume that they know that they've done well when they haven't been told they've done something wrong. But having having the benefits of hearing that you're successful fosters an amazing sense of self-esteem, and it also makes it worth it for them to put the work in. Your child develops a growth mindset as well, and we've talked a bit about that, about how it really is important for our children, especially our children that aren't neurotypical, to develop that growth mindset, to constantly be willing to try different strategies, to see learning rather than being a rock that sits there, see it as a tree that constantly grows and develops. Your child becomes more willing to accept feedback, which is what we talked about before. Children with low self-esteem can't take feedback. They take it as a personal slight against them. Children that hear descriptive praise and feel successful and have a growth mindset are very willing to accept feedback, because to them, they see that as a strategy to make life easier for them. If I hear a way of doing my website as a businesswoman that makes it easy, I love getting that feedback. But I have to come from a place where I'm willing to take critiques on my work as a businesswoman. Children who are still developing and still trying to understand their way in the world, they need that so much more. And I think the most important thing as a parent that I get out of using descriptive praise is it gets me in a positive mindset. I haven't always used descriptive praise, and I don't always use descriptive praise because I am human. People say, oh, you're a parenting coach, you must never yell at your kids. And of course I yell at my kids. I'm a human person that makes mistakes as well. However, when I use the strategies, including descriptive praise, and I use them consistently, I get to stay in a more positive mindset. It helps me stay calm, and it helps me not be the shouty mom that I hate, this shrew that I turn into when I lose control. It keeps myself positive, and then I can help set the tone for my home. So I would encourage you to start using descriptive praise with your children. Really start looking at what they're doing. Does it take a little bit of time? Of course it does. It takes more time than saying good job, but does it have a profound effect? Yes, it does. So when you see your child who might be struggling with their reading, but they're trying anyway, and you say, sweetie, I really just want to let you know, I know that this is difficult for you, and yet you are still persevering, and you are still trying. And that shows me that it's important to you to learn. And I just really admire that in you. And I hope you admire that in yourself. Find different ways to praise their efforts and to praise their achievements and the process that goes into them. And I think you'll see a very profound difference in your home. So, all right, so we have a Q&A period. If I can see how this, hold on, I've got to stop sharing my screen. All right, are we there?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you very much. If you have a look at the bottom, can you see the Q&A box?
I see it. What is a positive way in which to tackle red pen teachers? Okay. So first and foremost, let me say that it's important to teach your children that you can't always change other people, but you can change the way you let it affect you. So the first place to deal with that will be with your child, because when your child sees red ink and she's feeling constantly criticized, you're going to be her first stop to kind of go forward with that and say, you know what, if that's what she wants to see, that's fine. And maybe that's how she's learned to teach you. But look at what I see in your paper. I look at those capital letters and oh my goodness, you stayed on the line this whole time. And look, you even tried. I mean, I remember a year ago when you would only write one word on a page. And now look at that. I've got 6 words on one line. That's fantastic. That shows me that it's important to you to develop and grow. And then I have no problem being that mom and going to a teacher in a very positive way and say, you know, where I especially have a child that I need to advocate for, because he doesn't necessarily have the skills to advocate for himself, I will say, you know, I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback. My child loves your class. You know, start with a compliment. Say, I've noticed how there are a lot of red marks on here and a lot of mistakes that are shown. Would it be okay for you to also show him things that he's done right? Because I think it's important to him, and it's important to you to know that he does things well. It's the only one I see. Oh. How do you take the buts out? I catch myself saying, hey, that was tough, but, and I tend to stop before I say it's wrong. Okay, just stop yourself. Just say, I mean, I'm a but person too. I've got a big old button for about every other sentence that I want to say. So I might say, you know, you really tried on that but, and as soon as I hear it come out of my mouth, and I'll say, but nothing, you tried really hard, and I'll just end it like that. So it's okay to catch yourself out. And the more you practice using descriptive praise, the less time you're going to spend saying but or however, or you might want, or any other thing. Just remember, say your compliment and then shut your mouth. Any other questions coming up?
So I'll ask a question.
Okay.
You probably heard me say a few things about my daughter. she has a lot of personality. How would
and
you?
Isn't that amazing?
Great when she leaves home, but it's a lot easier to handle. But how do you suggest that we deal with the whole teenage rebellion thing in 7-year-old girls? Like when she's really going at it, no matter what you say,
mm-hmm.
she speaks to you, and honestly, sometimes it's so challenging. How can we turn that on its head?
So there's a technique that you use that's called emotion coaching, and that's to try and give you a short version. Remember that what she says is not what she means. So when she's losing her mind and she's saying, I hate you, what she's really meaning is, I feel let down, I feel overwhelmed. And so try and see what emotion she doesn't have the vocabulary to convey to you. Younger children especially, you know, I mean, you ask a 3-year-old how they're feeling, they're either mad, sad, glad, happy, that's it. That's their emotional vocabulary. So as she's feeling cross, let her be cross, because you don't want her to feel like she can't have emotions. So you do some reflective listening with her. You say, I can hear that you're really angry right now. I hear a lot of anger. Maybe you feel a little bit let down because I didn't do things the way that you wanted me to do. Don't be afraid about guessing wrong on it, because if you get it wrong, I promise she'll tell you. My kids love telling me when I'm wrong. I can tell you feel a little bit frustrated. I'm not frustrated. I'm rah. You know, it's like, okay, thanks for letting me know that. So like emotion coaching, like I said, is another whole big thing, but certainly let her have those emotions. And rather than punishing her for having the outburst, let the steam go, give her cuddles, do some reflective listening, and then take it from there.
Thank you.
That's one skill I actually, because as a teacher, we punish, you know, I mean, you punish in a classroom because it's the only way to manage 30 kids, you know, there's discipline in there. And positive parenting really says, and this is something I had to learn, actually, my husband taught me with my oldest. He's like, you know, you don't have to, he doesn't have to be getting it right all the time. You don't have to put him in timeout for every little thing. You don't have to, you know, sometimes you can just be his mommy and give him cuddles, and that's okay. So just remember that wherever you come from needs to come from a place where you're keeping her safe, you're helping her learn, or you're making her feel loved, and kind of turn to her as opposed to letting her get your goat.
Yeah, we do pick our battles now, because half the time when she walks in from school, it's full-blown meltdown from when she walks through the door, because she's just so stressed from school and holding it together. So it's just like, I love you, so I'm going to take it out.
You're safe. I can't yell at my teacher, but I can yell at my mom.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make it any easier. I know some of the members that we've been talking about some quite challenging behaviour this week, especially children that are on the autistic spectrum, when it comes to hitting out and like just how to manage meltdowns, because to some extent you can try and direct them away from it, but others, if they've just passed that point and they're just so wound up, it's really, really hard to bring them back, isn't it?
Right, and certainly the trick with that, and it's really easy to say, but prevention is always better than intervention. So if you see that the spiral's starting, if you can find that sweet spot where you can start to turn them away before they get to the point, because once they get to the point that they're hitting, they've lost it, and it's just about managing, keeping everybody safe at that point. And that's just the reality of it. So autistic children especially love descriptive praise because of the black and white thinking that they have. It makes sense to them. If I tell my autistic child, good job, he doesn't even process that. He doesn't even care what I'm saying. It just sounds like words coming out of my mouth. But if I give a specific descriptive comment, that makes sense in the way that he processes the world. So the more descriptive praise you use, over time, the less the meltdowns happen, because they're willing to take that risk a little bit more and a little bit more each time. So I've got one in the chat box that says, if a child refuses to go to school, should you praise them for going into school next day, or that be fear of bringing up the issues from the day before, or should I say it when he gets home from school? So school phobias and school resistance is a very, very strong subject. If your child is making efforts to go to school, you praise. You praise him for getting his shoes on. You praise him for walking out the door, for getting in the car, for walking, and giving very, very specific praise for what he's doing, because it's scary. Even if it seems like they're just doing it because they just want to, they just want to ruin your life, or they just, they're losing it, and they're just, sometimes you're like, I don't know what's wrong with my kid. He was so nice before he learned to talk. But it's coming from a place of fear. And so your job as a parent is to support your child in that fear. So you praise them, when they don't go to school one day and you start talking about going to school the next day and they say they're willing, you start praising there, and you really support constantly. And then when they get home, you praise again, look at what you did and look at this. And you must feel, and rather than saying, I'm proud of you, say, you must feel so proud of yourself. You must realize how hard that you tried, and let them really take ownership of their choices in a positive way. Because when they're to the point that they're refusing school, they've gotten so much negative feedback, so many, tired teachers that maybe didn't handle situations well, that may have just given a throw-off comment because they're people too, but the child takes that to heart. there's so much there. So definitely constantly through the entire process.
I said the word was, I think we used earlier, was it confrontational bait?
That's it, confrontational bait. I need to write that down. I meant to write it down earlier. I was like, I've got to say that. So yeah, don't give your child an excuse to fight with you, because kids love to fight. I love to fight, to be honest. There's nothing better than when I've had a bad day and I get home and my husband hasn't done the dishes and I get to go, right. But yeah, removing those obstacles and setting your children up to be as successful as possible is what really our job is as parents. So, okay, so this says, awesome, thank you, Gwendolyn. Oh, you're welcome, Vicki, that's very kind. Emma says, Ty's teachers have always said he is spirited. Not sure if it's good or bad, but I take it as good. He said hi, Sarah, and he runs in every time he hears you. Oh, that's lovely. So anonymous attendee says, I've missed some of the webinar, but one of the issues I'm having in the way my son speaks to me and his dad, he's very quick to anger, and he is very verbally hateful as well as physical. Schools say I should just punish him, but I'm not sure that is the right thing to do, as I always don't think he can help it. He's very complex with lots of difficulties, but is also bright, and I think he gets very frustrated. I try to praise him lots. He's a teenager, so there you go right there. If that's not some sort of untypical or not neurotypical, I don't know what is as a teenager. He's a teenager, so I think this is obviously part of his issue as well. I can't say anything or even look at him without him kicking off. So that's where you can start praising in the absence of the negative. So when he starts on his tirade, you can say, you know, if I could just put you on pause for a second. That's my favorite one to use with my autistic son and my ASB students. If I can pause you for a second, you can be mad again in a minute, but I want to let you know I can feel how angry you are, but right now you're keeping your hands to yourself, and I know that's very difficult for you. So I just want to say I appreciate that. So you can unpause and be mad at me again. And so sometimes just taking that break for a second, they hear pause, and our kids are also techno, you know, programmed that they're like, they have to pause. They don't know what else to do. And it kind of helps de-escalate the situation. Praising is important. Emotion coaching is also going to be very important for that. Sarah, we might want to look at doing one on emotion coaching too while we're at it, because it seems like that could be really beneficial here. But just as far as being punitive is concerned, I think that as parents, and the research shows that when we just start throwing punishments out there, it doesn't make sense. It's like when, you know, if my youngest son doesn't do his homework and I say, fine, we're not going to the zoo on Saturday. Well, what does the zoo have to do with his homework? Those two are not connected, you know. If I make a mistake out in the world, if I speed, I get a speeding ticket and points on my license. That makes sense. But if I speed and I lose my TV for a week, what do those two things have to do with each other? He's not learning the natural consequences of his actions. So first of all, it's going to be about modeling. Second of all, using descriptive praise, and certainly praising in the absence of the negative is important. But just remember, the school does not get to dictate what happens in your home. I get really frustrated when schools try to tell parents how to parent with unsolicited advice like that, because punishment works at school. It doesn't work the same way at home, and it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to them. Your job is to be a support and to develop strong bonds so that he can in turn develop strong bonds later on in life. So if it doesn't feel right to you to be punishing like that, then don't do it. So,
wow. I think it's Christmas. Gwendolyn says we're not punishing you.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is I believe in natural consequences. So and this took me a long time because I am a teacher too. So the day I realized that my son's planner was not my responsibility, when he started year 5, he had to get his planner signed every day. And he would always forget, and I'd get a call from the school and I'd have to sign his planner. And so finally I said, all right, you have one responsibility. And I support him quite a bit, but I was trying to teach him something. And I said, this is your responsibility to come and ask me to sign your planner. If you don't do it, I'm not going to remind you. And he says, well, if I don't get it signed, then I'll have a detention and I'll miss 5 minutes of my break time. And I'm like, well, I would certainly go get me to sign your planner then. That sounds like an incentive. So it took a day. He didn't ask me to get it signed, and it was the hardest thing in the world to me, because we want our children to go to school prepared and full, and you know, have the appearance of the Facebook, Pinterest mom. But it was more important to me that he learns this personal responsibility. I get a call from his teacher, and he's like, you know, I'm trying to go easy on him. I'm like, no, don't go easy on him. There's a natural consequence there. If he doesn't get his planner signed, he misses 5 minutes of his playtime. That's his consequence. So allowing him to have that responsibility and that consequence. Of course, he came home and said it was all my fault, but he learned. But I could promise you he got his planner signed every day after that, and that's fine.
Awesome.
Okay, here's a really good one, actually. Positive praise is great, but what is the best way of motivating quieter children and moody teenagers? Okay, so those are sometimes two different things. Quieter children, some children are just quiet by nature, and some children are quiet because of confidence. Descriptive praise works either way. So if your child is being quiet and trying to disappear, then they're needing a little bit of extra support put in there to help them kind of come out into their own. So sometimes it's not always about praise so much as it's about offering support. However, if your quieter child is reading, if your quieter child is, you know, even things like table manners or getting into the car and following directions, start praising there. Start praising with what you're seeing. And the more you praise, the more your child will want to be praised. And remember, it's not just positive praise. It's not saying good job. It's not evaluative praise. It's descriptive praise. So look at you. You've got your book out. You're reading. That shows me that you have a love for learning and you're developing, you know, really good job there. As far as teenagers are concerned, they're going to be moody either way. And even if they're not moody, they're going to pretend like they are. So remember that the praise is working, even if they don't want you to believe that it is. So praising your teenager, you know, oh, I don't want to go to grandma's house. Why do I always have to go? I want to go hang out with my friends. Oh, kiddo, I know you don't want to go to grandma's house, but you know what? I appreciate that you're still getting in the car and you're still going. Still following my directions. That shows me that you love your grandmother and that the family's important to you. And remember, sometimes they don't have to do what we ask with a smile on their face. Sometimes moody teenagers, if they're following the directions, that's okay. What's our end goal? To get him in the car and go to grandma's. It's not to make him be happy and perky and, you know, be who he is. It's not his fault that he's a big box of chemicals when he's a teenager. So if he wants to be moody while he's following directions, that's fine. My son can be so stubborn and it's hard to talk him around if he decides not to do something. How's it best to get him to change his mind on something? So that's going to be breaking things down into smaller steps, chunking things down. So if he is, for example, unwilling to do his homework, this can be a consistent thing, especially with children that have difficulties in learning. If it's a consistent thing, one intervention that I've used with students, I haven't had to use it at home, but it works really well for students. If they have 20 math problems to do, for example, say, okay, well, if you do one, then you can cross one out. Make it, you know, every one that you do, you get to cross one out, or every two that you do, you get to cross one out. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to take steps for him to kind of build that success. So start, if he's got 0 and you've got him up to 50%, you're doing something really, really well there. So descriptive praise for the steps that are being taken. Distraction works sometimes too. So for example, my daughter, who has inherited my personality, that thinks she's more stubborn than me, and who knows, she isn't yet, but she's learning. We were walking home from school and she was tired and she was just done. She had one of those days. She's like, I cannot walk. I don't want to walk. I want you to carry me. Now this child is 7 years old. She's tall for her age. I haven't carried her around since she was 3, and I have a bad back. I'm like, kiddo, that's not happening. And so I talked to her about, oh, kiddo, you just do not want to walk, do you? No, I don't want to walk. Oh, and don't you wish that we could just get in a TARDIS and have it take us home? All the while I'm talking to her about walking home as we're walking home, and she's talking about how she doesn't walk home and she's absolutely not going to do it. And we finished the conversation when we got to the door. So sometimes it takes a little bit of being creative and talking them around and distracting them. But breaking things down into smaller steps makes a difficult task seem a lot easier to accomplish. Let's see what we have here. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you very much. It's been a very good insight, and I'm definitely thinking now how I can change how I speak to my children, and especially my son, who is possibly autistic. Oh, thank you. Another thing that I forgot to put in the presentation that I wish I had is descriptive praise doesn't always have to be verbal. Some children would prefer it to be a little bit quieter, or certainly wouldn't want it to be in front of their friends. So you can put a note under their door. You can send them a text. You can, there are other, you can be a ninja parent and find other ways to descriptively praise them. It doesn't have to be, eye contact. I'm looking at you, you're looking at me. We're paying close attention to each other all the time. Children love to have notes written to their teachers about things that they've done well. Certainly teachers like being able to praise kids too, for speaking from the teacher side of things. So if I write, we write wow slips for kids when they're in reception, but it kind of gets forgotten about later on. Children that are having a difficult time, 99% of teachers do want to support them, even if they're not necessarily supporting them in the right way. And if you can descriptively praise them to their teacher, and their teacher can give that praise back, then that can be really beneficial as well. So, right. Any other questions? Oh, you've gone quiet. I can't hear you, Sarah.
Oh, I was going to say, there's normally one that pops up just as I wrap it up. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anyone there? No, I don't think there is. Thank you very much for that session. I'm really, really looking forward to it, and it was definitely worthwhile. I will 100% be going and making my husband listen to it too.
Fabulous. It's always good to be playing from the same playbook.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? I mean, I studied psychology as well whilst I was at uni, and you learn about all of these theories, and I've put some of them into practice in my work within schools, but it's very different when it's your own children, and you almost feel like, what happened to me? This is not who I wanted to be. This is not how I imagined being a parent.
Exactly. And aren't you supposed to know what to do?
Yeah, exactly. But I always feel like she is that good, and she's that clever, that the strategies that I would have used and have used in my career, they just don't work on her. She sees straight through it. So it was really nice to have fresh eyes, I guess, on the situation, and maybe a bit of reinforcement that I do actually need to go back and reset and start again. I think both Chris and I, sometimes we sit there and we feel like we're going absolutely insane, and we wait until bedtime. The whole day you're waiting for bedtime to come around so that you can get your peace, and then bedtime comes, and then it's 8, 9, 10, 11, and they're still upstairs coming down. And
sometimes when we're frustrated and we're in a negative mindset, that's like blood in the water to the kids. They're like, right. They feed off of us so much, and they are going to win the negative game. So certainly being able to force yourself to look for the positive, even oh, you're yelling at me, but you didn't swear this time. Sometimes that's what you need to see, and it changes your mindset and helps you stay calm, which is a calming influence on your kids, and it helps all around. So I'm glad this will help.
I think you can come again, Gwendolyn.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd love to.
What do you think, guys? Do you think that we should invite her back? You could post a comment. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, definitely. I thought it was brilliant. Thank you very much. I will wrap it up for this evening. Thank you, ladies and gents, and everyone that joined us for the session.
Thank you for hostessing as well.
I'm going to send out a feedback link shortly. I'll post it in the group if you'd be willing to give us some feedback, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much. You're still there. You're
absolutely.
Not I know. Cool. All right then. Good evening, everyone. Take care.